Welcome to Heal Dish, the space where healing gets real and you don't have to have it all together to grow. Each week we explore the nervous system, emotional resilience, and the journey from surviving to thriving. You're not broken, you're healing, and you don't have to do it alone. This is Heal Dish. Let's begin. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Monday night episode of Heal Dish. I am your host, Gina, and it's so good to be here and so good to see each and every one of you. If this is your first time, I would love it if you would hit the subscribe and like button, share out, because you never know who needs to see these videos and to see the live. And so tonight is something that we probably never really thought about, especially if your kids were ever in sports. And so on tonight's episode, we are going to talk about when winning hurts, how coaching shapes a child's mind and nervous system. And, growing up, what was a memory? Did you have a memory of a coach? Were you in sports? And what memory do you have, if you were in sports, what memory do you have of a coach that stands out? Was it good? Was it bad? Do you feel like it shaped you? Do you feel like it hindered you? Kind of where are you with that? So good evening to Sly, Scott, Dave, welcome, each and every one of you. Oh, there's Michael. Good evening, Michael. So when you think about your childhood, is there a coach that stands out in your memory? So think about it. Maybe it's the one who believed in you, who saw your potential before you did, or maybe it's the one who yelled, humiliated, or used fear to control you. Both experiences shape you to who you become today. Just not athletes, that is humans. So think about it. Did you play sports as a kid? Do you have kids that played sports? How do you feel that the coaches, their demeanor, the way that they interacted with your children, do you feel like it helped them and shaped them to become who they are today? Or do you feel like it caused some issues? Especially the ones that yelled, humiliated, and used fear to control these kids. So Dave said, I had a basketball coach that was a complete D-head at the time, but now I'm older, I get where he was confused from. Coming from, okay. So let me read that again. He had a basketball coach that was a complete, I'm just going to say moron at the time, but now I'm older, I get where he was coming from. Okay, and so some people do, because you have to think of their role models. Who were their role models? And so think about it. Growing up, even watching sports, especially like wrestling. Wrestling was a big thing in my family. I didn't really like it, but they all did. Sports was a huge thing. And I remember watching basketball games and wrestling and all that. And the coaches would sit there and yell and scream at them and kind of belittle them and just humiliate them and things like that too. And so sometimes that's okay. I shouldn't say it's okay. It depends. I guess it kind of depends on how are they using it. If they're yelling and humiliating you, then it could be, especially if they're using fear to control you. If they're just yelling to kind of get you going and motivated, there might be a fine line there. But I think after today's episode, you may kind of have a different aspect of exactly maybe some different things, a different way to see things. And, I believe that our role models, especially in the coaching industry, when you see all of these other role models and all of these other coaches, and they had to yell and scream and humiliate their players, that was a role model. And so that trickles down from generation to generation. And unfortunately, the generation that's coaching now, that's what they grew up on. And so maybe they don't know, maybe it's through no fault of their own. But if you're coaching kids like that, I have to think that you are probably using the same type of skills in your own family. So not only are you causing disruptions in your child's nervous system, but now you're causing disruption in the players' nervous systems. And so tonight we're going to kind of talk about that. We're kind of on the roll of working through nervous system, exactly what the amygdala does, the prefrontal cortex, and how that's a really big role. And so, it goes back to nervous system regulation and things like that. And so, because we're entering into a lot of sports, just coming out of football, going into basketball, there's still some football still, hanging on, NFL, all of that stuff. And so I just thought it was really important because I see it more and more. I see it more and more. Now, if I wasn't in the position that I'm in, I probably wouldn't have seen it. I probably wouldn't have noticed it. But because I'm in the role that I'm in, I notice more. I pay attention more. I analyze more. And if nobody's going to stick up for a child, then I think it's my duty to stick up for somebody. And especially children. No child should be belittled, yelled, or humiliated when they're at practice. They shouldn't be yelled at to a point that the child is on the verge of crying, or they shouldn't be reprimanded where they have to do 50 suicides because they may be a few minutes late. It shouldn't be the child's responsibility when it's the parents that can't get them there. And and I'm speaking from experience. And this happened to our son a couple weeks ago. He was 21 minutes late to his first basketball practice. We both work weekends. Sorry, I don't want to get up on the weekend and take him to a game or to a practice and stuff like that. And, these teachers are getting used to getting up. Well, I don't. I like to sleep in. So unfortunately, my son was 21 minutes late to practice, and he got reprimanded and had to do 21 suicides. And I don't agree with that. There's different conditioning, there's different punishments, but there's some things that I don't agree with, and not just from a parent standpoint, but from a mental health professional standpoint as well. And so, again, I'm hoping as we go through what we're talking about tonight, when winning hurts, how coaching shapes a child's mind and nervous system. I'm really hoping that you will kind of see where I'm coming from, and just kind of see that that maybe it'll open your eyes, that maybe if you're at a sporting event and you see this, maybe it'll open your eyes to be like, man, that guy, he shouldn't be yelling at the kids like that. Or, maybe there's a way to change those types of things and stuff like that. And so, when we talk tonight, we're going to talk about sports coaching and child development through a trauma-informed lens. And so what it's going to do is we're going to learn about the child's brain and body when coaching becomes harmful, and what healthy coaching looks like. And then again, how we can rebuild kind of that trust once the pain is caused. So how does that happen? Because how many kids love sports? How many of them? A lot of them. And then they want to quit because they have a coach that is very, very mean. Doesn't care or anything like that. And I know a few coaches that don't even yell at their kids. They don't do anything. They literally talk very, very normal, very soft. And they empower and inspire them. And I think we need more coaches like that. We really do. And I just think it would go a lot further. Don't get me wrong. There are some that might be a little soft, meaning kid-wise, that they might need a little bit more. I'm not saying yell and scream at them, but they might need a little bit more. You might have to raise your tone a little bit, but it doesn't mean you have to full-fledged and full on yell and scream at them, and to where their nervous system is like, holy smokes, what's going on? Like, I don't like this at all. And that's not what we want. So let's start with the hard truth. Verbal abuse in sports is widely normalized. And it is just exactly what we were just talking about. Had I not been in this position, I would have never realized that there's a lot of verbal abuse in sports. I've seen it. I've heard it. And you can ask my husband. There's times I just want to sucker punch the coaches because I can't stand how they talk to the kids. Not only my kid, but other kids, because it absolutely drives me insane. So we call it tough love, grit training, or mental toughness. But when you strip away those labels, it's often fear-based control. And so I've worked with kids. I've worked with, quite a few adolescents. And what I have found is when they're at home and their parents raise their voices, it sends them into an activated state, sorry. And the same thing when they're at their practices as well. And so it just makes them feel like, oh my goodness, they're at home. But even though it's normal, let me rephrase that. Sorry. Even though they're having a normal reaction to a abnormal situation, they don't recognize that it's abnormal because it happens at home. So now they come back into the environment, and they're like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on? And so their nervous system feels it, although they don't recognize what's going on. So remember that. And so what happens is their nervous system starts remembering all of this stuff. And so Michael says, not just the coaches, but the parents on the sidelines. Yes, you are absolutely right. I firmly believe that too, because it's not just the coaches. There have been times that I'm glad that you said that, because there are parents and stuff like that that will start yelling. They'll start yelling at their kids, and goes back to humiliating. They humiliate their kids and humiliate, and it's just like, whoa, wait a minute, take a step back for a minute, and stuff. Just because your kid didn't hit the ball the first time or didn't score a touchdown, you know what? They're trying. They're trying. And so thank you for bringing that up, because it's not always the coaches. Sometimes it is the parents on the sidelines or the ones sitting there watching. And I have experienced that too. And there are times that I do want to get up and be like, really? Really? And at a lot of the games and stuff that we attend, and I'm just like, man, and it's just heartbreaking. It's like, because you think about it. If you're talking to your child in the public that way, I cannot begin to imagine how you talk to your child in private. It's like, wow. And they don't think about those types of things, especially when a coach says, I yell at you the same way I yell at my kids. That's like red flag for me. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, what is wrong with you? I used to be a yeller, and I'll be the first to admit it. I used to be a yeller. Now I raise my voice a little bit more. I don't yell and scream. Sometimes I raise my voice to get the point across, because people sometimes do drive me nuts. But as far as yelling, I don't. Unless probably I'm really, really heated, and then you'll probably hear me yell. But other than that, no. But even at the games, I'll raise my voice. And I'm just like, this is absolutely ridiculous. And things like that too. So when a coach yells, threatens, or humiliates, the child's brain shifts into survival mode, much like what happens to us. So remember, the amygdala is the brain's alarm center. So that is like it detects the danger, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Danger, danger, danger. We have to escape. Hurry up, leave, bye. So it floods the body with adrenaline. So now you all of a sudden get this adrenaline rush, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Hello, fight or flight, kicking in, fight, flight, freeze. And you better hope that you fight or flight, because that freeze, everything just kind of shifts there. And so the body floods with adrenaline. And that's when you want to flee, fight. And then what happens is the prefrontal cortex is like, nope, wait a minute. Everything's fine. But it's really not fine. So the prefrontal cortex is the part that controls the focus, decision-making, logical thinking. And guess what happens? When you get into survival mode, we've talked about this. When you get into survival mode and your amygdala says, oh my goodness, danger, 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 the prefrontal cortex goes offline. And now you're stuck going, wait a minute, what's going on? So the very system that they need to perform is the only thing being shut down by fear. So think about it. Let's say that again. So when the amygdala detects something going on, whoa, 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 when the coach starts screaming and hollering, I was saying yelling, but I was saying yelling and hollering at the same time. So when they start hollering, what happens is the the amygdala is like, whoa, wait a minute, threat, 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 danger, danger, danger. And now your body floods with adrenaline. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on? That adrenaline rush, then you feel like you can run like a 5K in like 5 minutes because you got this much energy. And what happens is the prefrontal cortex, where we would do all of our logical thinking, executive functioning, where we would have our focus and decision making, what ends up happening shuts down. It goes offline. And so those very plays that now you don't remember. And so the coach doesn't know this. So you may have done this play 50 million times, and all of a sudden the coach starts screaming and hollering. And now all of a sudden the system that once knew all of the plays is now shut down by fear. So what ends up happening is, excuse me, so what happens is now, again, those plays that you knew, you don't know them anymore. And it's the same thing for me. I know a lot of trauma, but sometimes I get imposter syndrome. And then sometimes I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, I don't really know anything until you get me on a subject. And there'll be times I'll be sitting here and I'm like, yeah, but when I know things, but then when I'm triggered, it just kind of goes right out the wayside because my prefrontal cortex shuts down. So I'm like, well, wait a minute, what's going on? And so that's why we like to call that trauma brain and adult brain. So when you are activating the adult brain, you actually are able to perform all of those routines, all of those plays. Trauma brain is when your brain is in survival mode. That's when all of those plays, your body's like, I don't even know what I'm doing. So then, and then it's like, well, wait a minute, what happens? And so what happens is it's not even about mental toughness. What happens is it becomes trauma conditioning. That's exactly what it is. You're not even doing anything you love. Now you are controlled by fear. If I don't do this as a consequence, now it's fear-based. Do you see where I'm going with this? And so, yeah, it starts to become an issue. Sly says the refs can really tick him off. Absolutely, they can. And the refs say things too, but it does go back to the coaches. And just like Michael said, it goes back to the parents on the sideline. I mean, we're all, it's not that I'm guilty or, Sly is guilty of saying anything to our son or any of the other kids. We would tell Nick, you could try a little bit harder or, push yourself a little bit harder on things like that to try to encourage him more to say, because we know his limits. We know when he's not pushing himself. And so we try to motivate him to go above and beyond because he eventually does want to make it to the NFL. And so that is one of his goals. And so we push him a little bit and say, look, that, you can do this. And, even when he had a hurt tailbone, he still got out there and played. He couldn't run the ball because he couldn't run very fast because he had a hurt tailbone. But he still played despite all of the pain that he was enduring. He still played. And he still did really good, and stuff. And we commend him on that. But looking back, unfortunately, there's so many kids that their parents take sports. They take the fun away from it. Even the coaches too. They take the fun away from it. And that's not what it should be. Because think about it. What does sports teach you? You can teach kids discipline in a positive way. It teaches you structure. It teaches you planning, how to follow rules. So it has so many positive things to it. But when you have the wrong coach, it's destructive. It's not going to work. And so here's what long-term, when long-term exposure, when you do have trauma conditioning, when you have a coach that's just like, whoa, they're screaming and hollering all the time. So what happens is the kid starts to associate achievement with anxiety. So how many kids have anxiety? And then they wonder why. Why does my kid have anxiety all of a sudden? They seek approval instead of self-confidence. That's a huge one, especially self-esteem. They become perfectionist, people pleasers, and chronic overachievers. That's a big one too, because then it's like, oh, I want to strive to be a perfectionist. I want to strive to be a people pleaser. I want to strive to be seen an overachiever. But then burnout is so high. The rate for burnout is so high. And it's like, well, wait a minute. What am I doing? And then there's the time where it takes a toll on them emotionally, and not just them, but think about us as well. I mean, if you can kind of put yourself in their shoes, but think about it, think about maybe there's a situation when somebody screams and hollers at you. Maybe you have a boss that yells and screams at you or belittles you, humiliates you and things like that. Think about how you feel and how your nervous system reacts. It's a very similar situation. So what happens is every time they make a mistake, shame rises. And so now they feel shameful because their coach has made it to the point that if they're not doing anything right, shame starts rising. Fear every time authority enters the room. So every time a coach enters the room, now they start feeling fearful because, oh, that coach may treat me the same way as some of these other coaches or a parent or a teacher or anything like that. A belief that love or validation must be earned through performance. And that's a hard one. Like you're no child should ever have to feel like in order to be loved or validated, it has to be earned through performance. No, absolutely not. These kids deserve to be loved, whether they can perform or not, whether they're good on the field or off the field or on the court or off the court, on or off the court. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what kind of player they are. What matters the most is that they're given the time to play, that it's all about team effort, that they are treated the same way, and that their love for sport overflows into everybody else, and that they don't have to seek approval, they don't have to seek validation through their performance to be loved, whether that's to be loved by a coach or to be loved by a parent. That shouldn't matter. Everybody should have equal playing time. Doesn't matter how stinky you are at playing, it doesn't matter. Every child matters, and every child should play, in my opinion. And so what happens is when all of this happens, it's not coaching, it's conditioning your nervous system to survive. The same exact thing that we go through as adults, same exact thing. And so, it's just like, wow, looking at this and going, man, I would have never picked up on any of this, like I said, unless I was doing this for a living. And I was just like, this is interesting. Like another thing I'll bring up has nothing to do with this, but it does, because it kind of shows where you grow. I love going to purse bingos, and and if you don't know what a purse bingo is, it's just you go and play bingo for purses, and they have raffles and things like that. And so Saturday night, a group of girls and myself, we went to a purse bingo, and I was sitting there thinking earlier, I was like, I honestly wouldn't care if I ever went to another purse bingo. That's how bad it was. I used to go to them all the time, not all the time, but a few times. And I really enjoyed them, but they have changed so much, and there's so much filth and negativity in them. I was like, I don't live there anymore. So it was like, yeah, why would you want to put yourself in that environment, in that situation, if it's not enjoyable? So it's the same thing. I bring that up because it's the same thing with sports. Why would you continue to keep pushing your kids to go if your kid's telling you they don't want to go? Are you pushing them because that's what you wanted to do and you never were able to achieve that goal? Or, is it about potential? But then sit and listen to them. Really sit and listen to them and say, what's going on? Why do you not want to go? Don't push them, but listen to them. Let them, see if they will tell you why they don't want to go. Most of the time, there's a reason. There's a reason. Same things with kids. They don't want to go to school. There's a reason sometimes kids don't want to go to school, and it's not because they don't want to go. A lot of times it's either a teacher or they're being bullied. And maybe the teacher's a bully, because we've had that happen back in August. We had a teacher indirectly bullying. And so, these are all things that I see now, and I'm like, whoa, these educators need to be trauma informed, because little do they realize, like, they're traumatizing these children and don't even realize it. And that really, really sets me off. And so again, let me just say, the things that we talked about is it's not coaching, it's conditioning the nervous system to survive. And so you're actually teaching the nervous system to kind of be stuck, in survival mode, because now it's fear-based. And this doesn't just hurt the child in the moment, it shapes the adult they become. Adults who can't rest because they still feel like they're being judged. Adults who push themselves to exhaustion because good enough was never enough. So can you only imagine? Or can you imagine? I mean, maybe this resonates with you. Maybe this is you or was you. The coach might have thought they were building winners, but what they really built were wounded competitors. Oof. The coach might have thought they were building winners, but what they really built were wounded competitors. That is huge. That's like, whoa, think about it. They were all wounded. Kids can be wounded. It's crazy, isn't it? To just to kind of sit here and think about it and be like, wow, because they're supposed to be role models. But when you have a coach that's out there screaming and hollering and not even screaming and hollering, when you have a coach that's out there and supposed to be a professional influence and they are cussing at a child, that just gets under my skin as well. Like that's something that I cannot stand either, is when you hear coaches that are cussing at, children. Because again, it goes back to you don't know what is going on in that child's life. You don't know what's going on at home. That child could be yelled at every single day of their life. They might not even sleep at night. And they come to school to get a break, and then they come to practice, and here's the same thing. And it's absolutely crazy. Crazy. So think about it. It is. So the neuroscience of coaching. So let's talk about what happens inside the child's body. So we're always talking about neuroscience because I absolutely love neuroscience. Especially with what happens to the body, after trauma and things like that. And so that's pretty much exactly what this is. What happens inside the child's body and, when it's shaped by relationship and environment. And so we have to go back to look at as trauma survivors ourselves. So I know what type of an environment that I grew up in. I know exactly what it was. And so it's no different. It's no different. The neuroscience of the environment I grew up in, neuroscience of the coaching environment. And so when a coach screams, threatens, or when the coach screams or threatens a child, what happens is their stress response activates and it spikes their heart rate, their breathing shortens, and then the muscles tighten. And so over time, what happens is this becomes a neural imprint. And so it activates the amygdala. It stays in hijack mode. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Hello, what's going on? And so what happens is this actually starts having a negative effect on their learning, performing, and authority. And so because of all of this, and so the heart rate spiking and the breathing and the muscles are all physiological aspects of things. Those are things that you really can't see in the moment. You really can't see them. And so what happens is over time when these activate and then it's dumping all this adrenaline, the neural imprint of danger becomes associated again with learning, performance, and authority. And so they don't know what they're doing when this happens. They're like, whoa, wait a minute, what happens? And so this means years later in the classroom, jobs, and relationships, that same alarm system can go off whenever feedback or pressure appears. And so they don't know what to do because remember, when the amygdala has a danger, fight or flight, and it dumps the adrenaline and the prefrontal cortex goes offline, you lose your executive functioning, your logical thinking. And whatever you're supposed to be doing, it kind of goes out the window. And it's like, whoa, okay. And you might just stand there dazed and confused. And you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And then all of a sudden somebody will say, do you know what you're doing? No, I don't. And that's because you're waiting for your prefrontal cortex to come back online. Same thing happens here. Same exact thing. So on the flip side, when a coach provides predictable safety, the body learns something else. What does it learn? I can make mistakes and still be valued. The total opposite. Total opposite. Because now you have a coach that loves and cares, appreciates, and is showing you a different way. They're not showing you, they're showing you if you make mistakes, you can still be valued. If you might not be the greatest on the court or on the field, we still value you as a player. So what happens is this releases your dopamine and serotonin, dopamine and oxytocin. Oxytocin, what happens is it actually strengthens your learning, focus, and motivation. And so when that happens and there's that positive environment and it's releasing normal levels of dopamine and oxytocin, what happens is you start performing better. We don't want the adrenaline rush, because when you do the adrenaline rush, if you've ever been in fight or flight, you know what I'm talking about. You do not want that energy, because within 30 seconds, that energy is wiped out. That's not what you want. And then you're like, whoa, wait a minute. I feel like I just ran a 5K, although you just ran like for 2 seconds. That's not what we want. So we want coaches that will value you no matter how many mistakes that you make. They are willing to guide you, work with you, and understand you and build you up, motivate you in a positive way, because that's when you start releasing all of these natural hormones that you need for energy. That's your natural energy. If you are always living in a fight or flight and your energy is coming from adrenaline, your performance is not going to be as great as it could be. It's not. It's going to be hindered because that I want to say ATP, and I'm not even sure if that is, but that's actually what's coming to mind is ATP, which is your it comes up to I don't know if that's what it's called. Your energy and all of that. So I don't even know, but for some reason that's coming to my mind. So I don't even know if that's even what it is, but that's what's coming to my mind. And that's for performance. And so your ATP is going up. I believe that's when you go above and beyond your energy. So when you run out of energy, your ATP kicks in. I think, don't quote me, but I'm thinking that's what it is. And then all of a sudden you get like a burst of other energy. Well, with adrenaline, you don't get another burst of energy. It's just like, it just kind of, it goes, and then you're done and you're tired, and the rest is history. So when we say trauma-informed coaching improves performance, we're not talking theory, we're talking about biology. And so truthfully, that's what we're talking about, because it does go back to biology. It goes back to being able to have all of this, being consistent, having the positive role models, being valued, because that keeps your body what we call homeostasis, which your body stays at this level, rest and digest. It's where your parasympathetic is kind of leveled out, it's activated, and you're able to rest and digest. So everything starts working and functioning properly without being in overdrive or underdrive and things like that too. And so everything starts performing normal in the way that it's supposed to be. You're not in this activated state all the time where your mind is going like this and everything else is going and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. And so there are times that I am watching the players and I've noticed that some of them forget the play. And now I'm wondering, is it because their coach yells and screams at them? Or what kind of coach do they have coaching them? Excuse me. So I don't know. It kind of makes me wonder. Now, now I'm going to be more mindful of that while I'm watching, going, I wonder. It does make me wonder, and things like that, and to kind of see what the outcome is. It's my hopes that somebody watching this will be like, wow, this is powerful. This is impactful. We don't need to scream and holler at kids. We can raise our voice a little bit and get their attention and approach them in a different way. But don't threaten them. Don't use fear-based tactics. Don't come in when somebody's late and say, oh, now you got to give me 21 suicides and hope that they're not going to be late again. When you know what, it's not always the child's it's the child's responsibility to get to practice. Yes, but it's the parent's responsibility if that child has no other way to get there. Yes, okay, so you can't reprimand us, and I get that. And I'm not saying don't give them anything, but I just feel bad that these kids are being reprimanded for things that their parents are doing. And I did. I felt horrible that my son had to do 21 suicides because he was late, and it was our fault. Yeah, he could have set his alarm. So, he was partially to blame too. But, I felt terrible that my son had to do those. And I did. And I did express that to him, that I felt bad that he had to do those and things like that too. And things like that. And I was like, hopefully you don't have to do any more and things like that too. But, I pray for protection over my kids, because I don't want that negativity to instill in my kids and them to bring it home. I don't want that for them. That's not fair to them at all. So, what is positive coaching? So, positive coaching isn't about being soft or permissive. It's about being consistent, respectful, and emotionally regulated. And so, can you imagine, you know, having a, I guess looking at both. So now we looked at, an emotionally dysregulated coach, and now we're going to look at an emotionally regulated. And so an emotionally regulated coach, as we see, they're consistent and respectful. And that's the coaches that I know. Some of them that I go to church with, and I've seen them firsthand in the way that they work with teens. Very respectful, very consistent, and they don't raise their voice. They're very soft spoken, and they get the job done. And these kids love and respect each of them. And it's amazing to watch them because they're changing lives, they're transforming lives. And it's amazing just to watch them. And so here's kind of what that looks like: correcting behavior without demeaning the person. So gently talking to them, not gently, but talking to them in a non-demeaning way, encouraging them, inspiring them, let them know what they did wrong, and then bring a solution, help them see a solution instead of always trying to humiliate them. Tone and posture. What are your tone and what is your posture? You want it to be not really soft, but you don't want to be raising your voice too much. And what is your posture? You don't want to be sitting there like this while you're talking to them, because now you're not communicating safety. Now you're communicating that you're irritated or you're probably very upset with them. And so now you're not communicating safety to them. You're probably communicating more that, again, you're probably ticked off. And that's going to probably set the wrong tone as well. Modeling calm when the team feels pressured. So remember, so this is another thing, like when I'm sure all of us have kids. So this is another thing. Um, when you would hold a baby and the baby would end up laying on your chest, the baby would usually be peaceful and quiet because the baby felt or could hear your heartbeat, and could feel that you were calm, cool, and collective. If you were agitated and you were just not feeling good, and you were just all over the place, dysregulated, what do you think is going to happen to that baby? That baby's going to be fussy. That baby's going to be crying. And that baby is not going to settle down because it's trying to co-regulate with you. Now you're not regulated. So now that baby's not going to be regulated. It's the same thing with a team. If the coach is not regulated, the team's not going to be regulated. Same thing when I do sessions with my clients. If there's no regulation, my client is going to know that that I'm in a dysregulated state, and they're going to be able to feel it. And so I always have to make sure that I provide safety and comfort and regulation in all of my sessions, because they're mimicking me, they're watching me. And so I have to pay attention to them and pay attention to myself as well. And sometimes it's like, whoa, okay. And I have to be very mindful of them and pay attention to all the cues, so I know when they become dysregulated, and so I can help them so it doesn't start dysregulating me. And then building trust. You have to build trust through fairness and predictability. And so really building trust. And that's one of the biggest things that you start doing in the beginning. That's what I do with my clients in the beginning, is building trust. You don't know me from Adam, just like some of these kids don't know these coaches. And so when you enter and you come off as this hard person, and you think you're all bad, that's setting off a tone to these kids going, oh, wait a minute, now they think they're more superior than I do. Now there's no trust. And so I have to build that trust and tell my clients, you know what, I'm not higher than you are. We are literally equal. We're equal here. I'm not a superior, and you're not a superior to me either. We are literally equal when we're working together. I try not to treat anybody as if they're better than, or not better, but as if I am more superior than them. Because where does that really get you? Gets you nowhere. I have my own niches that I understand, and other people have their own. And so sometimes it's not that I'm any better than they are. It's just that's the field of study that I have been studying in, and that's where their expertise is. And so what I love is we can all come together and perform as a collective and knock the socks off doing any type of event because of the knowledge that we have. So if these coaches would come together from a trauma-informed perspective, what happens is every child that is on that team, their nervous system will look different. And that's going to be huge because you're going to have some of your students, some of the players that are going to have, anxiety. So they're going to be anxious. They're going to have avoidant. So they're going to try to avoid everything. And some of them are going to be like, they're going to have resilience, but they're going to be tired. And so when the coach is regulated, guess what happens? None of that matters. The anxious, avoidant, or resilient but tired, none of that matters because the coach is literally lifting them up because the coach is regulated now. That's what it is. So the goal is not to break them down. It's to help them find their center under stress. So they can still perform under stress of the game, but not stress of having, I wanted to say a bad word. I had to stop for a minute. Having, the stress that, yeah. So yeah, because I wanted to say that word so bad, I had to stop myself for a minute. So the stress of the game, not the stress of the coach adding to the stress of the game. Do you see what I mean? And so when they have the stress of the game and the stress of everything else, yeah. And so you may be thinking, oh, I'm soft, or, oh, these kids, like, and especially some of these generations. But I firmly believe that if coaches would use a different way, a different tone, we would see a lot more success in sports than these kids being yelled and screamed at and humiliated and whatever else, and then running around fear-based and having all this adrenaline dumped. Because I know as a child how I felt. And I would not want that on my child either. And so when kids feel, so when their nervous systems are regulated and they feel safe, what happens is they listen better, they perform better, and they recover quicker. So think about that. When their nervous systems are regulated, they listen better, learn better, and they recover quicker. And they learn faster. That's huge. Huge. Because now their prefrontal cortex ain't shutting off all the time. So you're not playing against all of this. So that's why I really feel like all coaches should be trauma informed. I think all teachers should be trauma informed because you never know what a child is going through at home. And so what better way than to be trauma informed? Because, and then you can see what's happening with these kids. You might not be able to see their home life, but you'll be able to see the home life in the classroom because it's going to come up. It'll come up. I bring that energy. I sub, and when I sub, all types of things happen. All types of things. I had a little kid that was in kindergarten. I subbed for art, but they were supposed to draw a picture. The kid drew a picture. This is no lie, because I try to regulate myself when I go into the classroom through prayer and just through the tools and resources that I've learned over the years. And this little boy drew a picture of himself coming down the slide, and he drew a picture of himself going down the slide, and then two women, and one of them I believe was his sister, and the other one was his mom. And his mom was crying, and he had put on the paper, "My dad beats my mom until she cries." And I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute." And I went over and I just had a talk with him, and I just said, this is not what we're supposed to be doing. No, I take that back. That's not what I said to him. I asked him what he drew. That's what it was. Sorry. I asked him what he drew, and he told me that that's what he drew and stuff like that. And I was heartbroken for him. And I did tell him, I said, "I'm sorry that you're witnessing those things. And I'm sorry that those are the types of things that are going on in your home. And, if there's anything that I can do, you let me know." And and stuff like that too. And so, he kind of gave me a hug, and I gave the picture to I didn't, yeah, I gave the picture to the teacher, and I just told his teacher that this was what he drew and stuff like that. And what I don't like about the schools is that they're not trauma informed. And so I don't know what they ever did with it. I don't know if they ever called his parents, but that's the thing that irritates me, is because then they call the parents, and then guess what happens? Now the child is in even more trouble. And so instead of kind of working with them at school to see what's going on and help them at school, because school should be a safe place for them. Sometimes it's not, though, and that's unfortunate as well too. And so, yeah. So have you guys ever had, or now that we're talking about this, do you see the side of, how two different coaches, how you can have two different coaches, but the coach that has more of a regulated nervous system will probably be the coach that can send their team onto championships and things like that, because they're coaching from a different standpoint. They're coaching from more of a positive reinforcement way. They're doing it more not even under an authority, but they're doing it more of out of safety and regulation. They're doing it more of coming at you in more of a straight tone, and saying, you know what, we value each and every one of you, not just because this one can perform better than you. We value each of you. We're willing to instill in you and work in you. And because when you do that, that's when players rise up and they begin to perform greater than they did before. Because now their prefrontal cortex is not shutting off. Think about that. That's a huge one. That's even a huge one for adults too. And so when coaching is fear-based, what happens is the I want to kind of go back and circle this again, but what happens is it goes back to my worth depends on my performance, and it shouldn't be. And so that is the fear-based portion of it. And so when you have a trauma-informed coach, the lesson is my worth is steady, my growth is what matters. And so that's what really matters when you're working with a coach that truly understands trauma informed and really saying, okay, this is what I'm doing. One leads to burnout, the other leads to confidence. And so unfortunately, those coaches are going to burn out before the one over here that's leading with confidence and really helping them. And so it really goes back to the safety of a relationship. So which coach do you want your child to have? Think about it. Which coach? I would love to have all of my children to have a trauma-informed coach. A coach that is confident, a coach that's going to build them up, a coach that's not going to yell at them and belittle them, a coach that is going to help them succeed. And when they do something wrong, a coach that's going to direct them and help them problem solve, help them see that, oh, you took the wrong step. It's time to take this step, and show them workmanship and show them how to work as a team. When you work as a team, you build success. That's exactly what it is. So where do we go from here? We can create athletic programs that honor psychological and physiological safety as much as physical training. So yeah, so the physiological training is what happens inside the body that you cannot see. Same thing with a trauma survivor. If you were ever to split us down the center and open us up, you would see all of the after effects of the trauma inside. You can't see it on the outside. You can't, but physiologically on the inside, you can. And so it's pretty much training. So, these coaches and these teachers should be trauma informed. And looking at positive coaching strategies is really what they should be doing. They should be modeling emotional regulation. And so that way the kids can kind of co-regulate with them, especially if they're upset or something's going on. The coach stays regulated, encouraging feedback, working with the athletes without fear of punishment. What type of encouraging feedback can you give? And then working with the athletes and saying, okay, we're going to work on this, and then they don't have to worry about having fear. Well, if I don't do this right, then I'm going to have to do 50 suicides. So then they're scrambling to get it right, and then they're and it's wrong. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. And then teaching parents how to support their children after tough practices or games. And so, yeah, it's kind of looking at how can we be that role model when they're not there, when they come home, and then how can we be that role model and advocate when we see things like this. Those are some things that you really need to take into consideration and kind of look at things like that. So yeah, so hopefully that kind of changes your perspective on looking at it from a trauma informed lens and then a non-trauma informed lens, and kind of seeing the difference as it's not going back to saying, oh, you're soft, doing it this way, but look at the difference. Look at the positive results you get when you have a coach that's more trauma informed and they're using positive coaching strategies. So much different. And, there's a lot of difference in each and every one of them. And so, really going back and really looking at it. And I'm hoping that you will be an advocate for a child, not saying go up and, say anything, but if you see something, maybe you can, say something to a school or say something nice to maybe a coach or something like that. And there's always nice ways to say things to people and things like that, so you don't come off as being rude. And that's when we had a situation, and so when I was talking to a personnel, I didn't come at them as a parent. I came at them more of a professional, giving them more of what happens in the nervous system when we have a coach that doesn't perform in a trauma-informed lens. They don't use those positive coaching strategies, and this is what happens. And so by the time they grow up, their nervous systems are so dysregulated, they don't know what to do. And so that's why a lot of children, when they're in college, that's why a lot of them don't know what they're doing, or they fail, or they just continue to go and go and go because they just don't know what they want to do because their prefrontal cortex is offline. So, a lot of them are like, oh, I just want to party and do this, da, 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 da. Well, their prefrontal cortex isn't developed anyway. And so then they have this going on. And so you're dumping all of that negativity in there, which is not good as well. And so, and one thing that we do have to make sure that we tell them is, sports isn't always about winning. What is it for? It's about building confidence, courage, and connection. That's really what it is. Winning is just an addition. It's a plus. But when we can wire them for confidence, courage, and connection, winning is the next step. When they actually have all this and they're performing as a team, winning will come like second to none when they're performing as a team and they have this. And that's what it is. And giving them those skills and everything else that they need. And so we just want to make sure that we are raising whole, emotional, healthy humans is truly what it is. And again, like I said, I'm not ousting anybody. It's just, these are things that I started to notice from doing the things that I'm doing. Had I not been doing what I'm doing, mental health professional and stuff like that, I would have never noticed these things myself. I would have just thought, well, okay, that's just normal, because I remember growing up again in an era where the coaches would scream and holler, and they still do, at all of the players, all of the athletes, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, wrestling, doesn't matter. They're all screamed at. Yes, there's a lot of them that are very successful. Absolutely, they are. But I often wonder, if the tables were turned and people were more trauma informed, using more of the positive coaching strategies, would there be more successful humans? Would there be more students that would play sports because they would feel seen, heard, and supported than they would to be humiliated in front of their peers? Some kids go to this because they want that support, and then they don't get it. So think about it. Think about that. So I'm really hoping that tonight's episode kind of opened your eyes to a new dimension of a non-trauma lens coaching, and coaching through a trauma lens And we're talking about sports, not trauma coaching. We are talking about sports through a trauma-informed lens. So, and things like that too. And so, if you would hit like and share, you never know who would be able to benefit from seeing this video and the podcast. I would really, really appreciate it. Next week, we will continue on the series of nervous system regulation. I'm going to actually probably start doing some more tools and resources just to kind of help out, especially leading up to holidays are coming. We had a lot of snow. I don't know. We had like 2-3 inches of snow. And so now by 6 o'clock, it's dark. And so the holidays are coming, winter's coming, the cold weather's coming. We can't get out as much as we'd like to. And so seasonal depression is going to start creeping in. And so I want to start to be able to offer some more tools and resources and just be there for each other as we get through these colder months coming up, and kind of lean on each other in times of need, and what we can do to support you. What can we do to support each other and things like that too. And so, think about it, and some of the things that you do in the winter time and stuff like that when you can't get out. Do you have a hobby? What do you do when you can't get out and do things? I like, for me, I'm like, oh, I could go grocery shopping, but then I'm like, no, I don't want to load the car and then come home and have to unload the car. And then I was like, oh, well, I could always just order the groceries and then they could, and then they could load up my car. No, I don't want to do that either. I actually like going in the grocery store and getting my groceries and things like that too, but it's just so cold. I'm like, man. So there's a lot of good and bad when it comes to the winter. I'm just like, eh. So just like last year, we got through it, and we will get through it again this year together. And so I just want to say thank you so much for listening to Heal Dish and listening to this episode where we explore the spaces between hurt and healing, and that's what we do. Through nervous system regulation and things like that too. Because that's what it's about. It's about understanding that we have to be regulated in order to start healing. And if we're not regulated, we're not in a safe space to start healing. And so God showed me that too. And so that's why I had to go back in and I had to revamp. It was already the way that it was, but I had to go back in and change some things. It starts with safety. It starts with regulation, and then you'll be able to start healing. And so I hope each and every one of you have a fantastic week. Be blessed, be safe. And I will be praying for each and every one of you. You know where to find me if you need me. If you have any questions, any concerns, if you have any show ideas, you can always send them to me as well. And so I will see everybody next Monday. Before I go, tomorrow I won't be able to see you, but I just want to say happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. Thank you so much for serving. And I really appreciate each and every one of you for your service. And so from my heart to yours, I just want to say thank you to every vet that is out there that have served, still serving, and unfortunately those ones that we lost. But I appreciate each and every one of you. Good night. Have a good week, and I will see you soon. Good night, everyone.